Welcome back to the Listicle, and today we will be reviewing the Apple Studio Display XDR. And honestly, Apple has a history of making displays that look incredible, but also make your wallet feel a little nervous. So when Apple announced the Studio Display XDR, the big question wasn't just, is it good? The real question was, is it finally the Apple monitor that makes sense? On one hand, this might be one of the most gorgeous displays Apple has ever made. But on the other hand, there are still some things about it that feel very Apple, if you know what I mean. So let's start with the obvious thing, the design. If you've seen Apple's other displays, this will look very familiar. The Studio Display XDR basically follows the same design language Apple has been using for years now. Aluminum chassis, thin bezels, super clean aesthetic, and that minimalist look that makes it feel like it belongs in some futuristic workspace. It's one of those monitors where even if the screen is off, it still looks expensive. Like the kind of thing that makes your entire desk setup just by existing. The build quality is exactly what you'd expect from Apple too. The whole thing feels incredibly solid. No creaking plastic, no weird flexing, just a solid slab of aluminum and glass. The stand is also very Apple-like in the sense that it's beautifully engineered and moves incredibly smoothly. But depending on which version you get, adjustability can still be limited compared to some third-party monitors. It tilts nicely, and if you go for the height adjustable stand, you get more flexibility. But of course, that costs extra, because, well, that's Apple for you. Now, the real star of the show here is obviously the panel itself. And this is where things get really interesting. The Studio Display XDR uses a mini LED display with significantly improved brightness and contrast compared to older Apple monitors. We're talking about peak HDR brightness that can reach around 2000 nits, which is extremely bright. But brightness alone doesn't make a great display. What really makes this panel impressive is the local dimming and contrast. The mini LED backlighting system uses thousands of dimming zones to control light much more precisely than traditional LCD panels. So when you're watching HDR content or editing video with deep shadows and bright highlights, the difference becomes very noticeable. Blacks look deeper, highlights pop more, and the overall image just feels more dynamic. It's one of those things where once you experience it, it's kind of hard to go back to a regular monitor. Color accuracy is also excellent here, which is exactly what you'd expect from an Apple display designed with creative professionals in mind. The panel supports wide color gamuts like P3, and everything from photos to video footage looks incredibly vibrant but still natural. If you do photo editing, color grading, or any kind of visual creative work, this display gives you a lot of confidence that what you're seeing on screen is actually accurate. Another big upgrade that people will notice right away is the refresh rate. The Studio Display XDR supports up to 120 Hz with adaptive refresh, which makes everything feel way smoother than a traditional 60 Hz monitor. Scrolling through web pages, moving windows around, scrubbing through video timelines, it all just feels more fluid. It's one of those upgrades that doesn't sound like a big deal until you actually experience it for a few hours. And then suddenly, every 60 Hz display starts feeling a little sluggish. Now, here's where Apple does something very Apple again. Inside this monitor, there's actually a chip. Yep, Apple put a processor inside the display. The Studio Display XDR uses an Apple Silicon chip to power features like the built-in webcam, speakers, and image processing. On paper, that might sound a little strange. Like, why does a monitor need its own processor? But it actually enables some pretty cool features. For example, the display includes a built-in camera with center stage, which automatically keeps you centered in the frame during video calls. If you've used an iPad or some newer Macs, you've probably seen this before. It's surprisingly useful for things like Zoom meetings or FaceTime calls, especially if you move around while talking. Although some really don't like this, so it really all depends on preference. Then there are the speakers, and this is something Apple tends to do really well. The Studio Display XDR has a multi-speaker system that honestly sounds way better than you'd expect from a monitor. The sound has real depth, decent bass, and it's perfectly good for casual listening, video editing, or watching movies. Now, is it going to replace a proper set of studio monitors? No. But compared to the tiny speakers in most monitors, this is a huge upgrade. Another thing Apple nails here is connectivity. The display connects to your Mac using a single Thunderbolt cable, and that cable can handle video, data, and power delivery all at once. So if you're using something like a MacBook Pro, you literally plug in one cable and suddenly your laptop is charging, your display turns on, and any accessories connected to the monitor are instantly available. It's one of those simple things that makes your desk setup feel incredibly clean. On the back of the display, you also get additional ports that basically turn the monitor into a mini docking station. So you can plug in things like external drives, cameras, or other accessories directly into the monitor, and they'll connect to your computer through that single cable. If you've ever tried to build a clean desk setup, you know how nice this kind of setup can be. But of course, this wouldn't be an Apple product without a few quirks. One of the things some reviewers have pointed out is that while the mini LED panel is fantastic, OLED displays still have an advantage when it comes to absolute black levels and contrast. Mini LED gets really close, but OLED can still produce those perfectly deep blacks because each pixel can turn completely off. Another thing worth mentioning is heat. When you have a display that gets extremely bright and also contains internal electronics, it's normal for it to get a little warm. Some people have noticed that the top portion of the display can feel slightly warm after extended use. It's not dangerous or anything like that. It's just a side effect of having a very powerful display packed into a thin chassis. And then there's the price. Because we can't talk about an Apple display without talking about the price. The Studio Display XDR is definitely not cheap. This is the kind of monitor that makes you pause for a second before clicking the buy button. But at the same time, Apple isn't really competing with budget monitors here. This is a premium display designed for people who spend hours every single day staring at their screen. Video editors, photographers, designers, developers, and anyone who wants a display that looks incredible. So the real question becomes, who is this actually for? And honestly, I think the answer is pretty simple. If you're someone who already lives inside the Apple ecosystem and you want the cleanest, most seamless monitor experience for a Mac, this display makes a lot of sense. The integration is fantastic, the image quality is excellent, and the overall experience just feels very polished. But if you're someone who just needs a basic monitor for general use, there are definitely cheaper options out there that will still look good. Apple displays have always been about that combination of design, ecosystem integration, and top-tier visual quality. And the Studio Display XDR continues that tradition. And at the end of the day, that's really what Apple is going for here. The Studio Display XDR isn't just a monitor. It's meant to be the centerpiece of your desk, the thing you stare at for hours every day. So is it perfect? No, no monitor is. But is it one of the best displays you can pair with a Mac right now? Honestly, yeah, it might be. Anyway, that's our take on the new Apple Studio Display XDR. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, make sure to subscribe because we've got a lot more tech videos coming soon. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you later.